Hello, friends. In 2021, the Nigerian Canadian Association, Greater Toronto Area, NCAGTA, hosted an essay competition to commemorate Black History Month. 2021 is also the 25th anniversary of Black History Month in Canada. The theme was "The Future is Now." For us at the NCA, it was a great opportunity to celebrate our youth, and an essay competition was born. We asked young Nigerian Canadians aged 18 to 35 to submit a short essay exploring the relationship between their identity and a favorite Nigerian dish. As you can imagine, the submissions we received were nothing short of amazing. Today, we meet with the winners of the essay competition to discuss their identity, their essays, and so much more. Good morning, Ajawale. Good morning, Eitade, and good morning, Omobolanle.
Morning.
Morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Namdi. I am the person whom you have been exchanging emails with. I volunteer with the NCA, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to this Hangout session. This session is intended to serve as a wrap-up to the Black History Month competition, which you participated in and happened to be our winners. So really excited to meet with the brilliant young Nigerians in Canada who shared their experiences. So we're going to get into a lot of stuff today, but I think a great place to start would be with introductions and getting to know each of you. So I'm going to start with you, Eitade. Please tell us about yourself.
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Eitade Kunle-Oladoshu. I'm a first-year student at Queen's University studying commerce. I'm extremely passionate about storytelling and the ability to speak about my community through stories. In the future, I hope to work in labor policy, hopefully telling the stories of women from racialized communities and helping them better their working conditions so that they can tell a story of overcoming and triumph.
Thank you. Really nice to meet you, and so interesting to hear about what you're currently doing and what you're looking to get into. I think a lot of our interests align, but we'll get into that much detail as we go along. Okay, Ajawale, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself as well. I think you are mute and would have to unmute.
Unmute, there we go. All right.
Awesome.
I am Ajawale Ajinia. I consider myself an autodidactic student. I'm into all sorts of things: music, stenography, languages, and entrepreneurship. Thank you.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. Really awesome. Do you want to tell me what autodidactic means?
Yeah, that means I'm as passionate about education, but not necessarily in the formal institutions. Like I am into the library, going to the library, pretty much self-education and self-directed learning.
Wonderful. And we have a lot of leaders who actually directed their own learning. A lot of names, popular names, people like Abraham Lincoln educated themselves, and a lot of other people out there. Anyway, we'll get into learning a lot more about you as the day goes along. I'd like to turn to Omobola now. I know I've been communicating with you as Omobolanle, and I know some people prefer to be called Bolanle or Bola, but now I see Omobola on your screen. I want to be sure I'm calling you the way you want to be called. So
Omobola or Mobi, either one.
Okay, Mobi. Nice to meet you. Please tell us about yourself.
Okay, so I'm Omobolanle Olariwaju Omobola. I'm an economics and theater and film graduate from McMaster. I'm currently working as a writer and volume lead for Trad magazine. I guess my life is all about writing and film. I hope to be a published author. I'm working on a book. and I hope to write and direct films sometime in the future.
Nice to meet you. And one of the reasons I'm excited to meet you is just like you, I'm a marauder. So
Really?
yeah, yes. I'm currently a marauder. I'm doing an MA in history at McMaster. So really happy to meet a fellow marauder and looking forward to getting into this really exciting conversation. So thank you very much to the three of you, not just for participating in the essay, but making out time to join us here. We know how busy it can be, particularly with a year wrapping up. People are trying to tie up all their loose ends. If you're a student, you're probably trying to finish your last essays for the year or your exams, getting ready for all that. If you are working, you're trying to meet your targets or whatever objectives have been set. So thank you so much for making the time to meet with us. Obviously, the reason we're here today is that you participated in this essay competition and also emerged as winners. So we're going to get into all that, to find out what the competition was about, what motivated you. And I'm going to start with you, Itade. How did you hear about the Black History Month competition and what motivated you to participate?
My mom is actually a teacher. So she's part of the NCTA, which is the Nigerian Canadian Teacher Association. So I think the NCA had come in contact with the NCTA and they had sent the information over. And so she was the one that actually really encouraged me to apply. I've always loved writing. I write creatively a lot in my free time. And I think talking about Black history, which we don't do frequently and which we don't always have the opportunity to do, I think this competition was of interest to me because it gave me the opportunity to reflect and to reflect on something that I'm really passionate about, which is food. So I was really happy when she presented the opportunity to me.
Really good. And I agree with you. Food is actually a critical part of any society. Imagine a society without food. Difficult to imagine, right? So I'm glad that you took that opportunity to express yourself. And your essay was really interesting. So we're going to talk more about that. Omobola, you want to tell us what, led you to participate in the essay competition, how you heard about it, and all of that?
Okay, so I actually heard about it through my sister. I'm not exactly sure where she heard about it, but she told me about it. She's actually collecting a finder's fee on top of everything for the whole thing. But yeah, she saw it and she's like, okay, you want to write, you haven't really been entering into any contests, so enter into this one. It's about food. Food defines your life, so go ahead and write about it. And that's how I figured out that I wanted to write it.
Cool, really cool. Thanks to your sister for helping us access the beautiful essay that you wrote, because if she didn't tell you, then we wouldn't have got to hear from you. So thank you, dear sister. Ajewale, you want to tell us about the competition? How did you hear about it and what led you to participate?
Yeah, it was also my mom. Yeah. I just thought, like, I'm not one to be into such things like contests, but I felt I owed it to Gary, the food itself, given the role it plays in my life. Pretty much that's it.
Yes, yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry I cut you. I was just concurring with your essay, which was really very interesting. And I'm going to stay with you, because what the competition asked young people to explore is the relationship between their identity and a favorite Nigerian cuisine. Now, you just mentioned it. There's no Nigerian that doesn't know Gary. In fact, the way you pronounced it, Gary, that shows that you really know the food, So your title of your essay was Anything Goes with Gary Jebu. It was both entertaining and educative at the same time. And yet, I'm sure that you've drawn more than a few stares from people for the bold experimentations you do with Gary. So I want you to tell us about your essay, tell us about the food, Gary, tell us about the different ways in which you have combined Gary, to eat. Just tell us as much as you want to about Gary.
Okay. Yeah. Gary, in the process of writing the essay, I actually started researching more about Gary because I didn't know a lot about it. Yeah, so I watched how the women in Nigeria, the process of making it, they would from cassava tubers, and they would cut the stuff, and they would it goes through a lot. I found out it goes through a lot more, than what I would have thought. And yeah, sorry, what was the question again?
Yeah, I wanted you to tell us about your essay, which is titled "Anything Goes" with Gary Ijebu.
Yeah.
Because the essay was entertaining, it was educative, and the points you made earlier are actually quite right. The cassava, which is the root crop from which Gary is made, goes through a lot of processing. I've seen the whole process from end to end, from when it is harvested, and of course, different regions in Nigeria produce Gary differently, but the process is generally the same. After harvesting, you have to peel the cassava, crush it, grind it, process it, take out the starch as much as possible to make it more edible. So yeah, it's a very extensive process. I agree with you. What we would like to know is about your essay. Anything goes with Ijebu Gari. So tell us about it. And also tell us some of the ways you use Ijebu Gari, because that was one of the very interesting things you mentioned. I'm sure people who are going to watch this would be interested in learning, some of your recipes.
Thank you for getting me back on point. Yeah. I in the process of writing the essay, I was thinking, I didn't want to include the Ijebu part. Just, Gary is supposed to be Gary. But I thought about it, like, I do like the other kinds too, but just the flavor, the sourness of the Ijebu Gary, it's distinct. It's yeah. Like and then, so going on about my essay, it's how Gary's always been in my life from when I was young. Like I said, with my cousin, he was the one who sort of introduced it to me, and in the way he combined, he mixed it up with things, and then yeah, as you can see, I am not really good at this, but yeah. In the process of writing my essay, I found out a lot about, like, they even have like an organization of people who process Gary, like who produce Gary, like it's like any other trade basically. And Gary, maybe I should come back to it. You should probably get back to the other participants.
That's absolutely fine. That's absolutely fine. So one of the things I found intriguing about your essay is how you'd say, for instance, you could sprinkle it on beans to eat and sprinkle it on some of the less conventional things you see people, you can imagine mixing it with, like sprinkling it on rice. So
yeah.
I found that quite, and I'm getting a reaction from Moby.
Yeah, I can go into that now. Thanks.
I've never tried that.
That tells you it's quite interesting, I said, oh, okay, I've never thought about this, so
I should probably go into it now before I forget, before I lose my train of thought again. It's all about the different forms. There's the drinking, the stereotype, the kneading eba, and then there is just the grainy side. So when it comes to the cereal type, I do like to mix it up with like cookies, pretty much anything. Like ekpa is sure, but there are so many other things you can explore when it comes to that. And then there's the kneading eba. It's not so much my favorite, but it does, like, you can only do so many combinations without exploring more. And then there is the sprinkling. That's my favorite part. It's like the Italian cheese, and like I really like, yeah, I really enjoy that on pretty much everything. I'm always just it's getting it's like I have this thing that I want to know what it feels like to sprinkle this thing on, and probably, sprinkle this thing on something that's never been, that like most people would not think about. It helps. I don't know if it's, I guess it helps. I feel like it helps me in terms of my sense of identity, because it plays, maybe it's just me, I don't know, like in everything else apart from food, I guess I'm probably also like that. Like with music, I'm into all sorts of genres. And
Cool. I think I can see that coming through, because you mentioned earlier how you adopt a wide approach to learning, and I can see that same wide approach being applied to your consumption of Gary. One thing I want to just check with you before I ask the next question would be, how do you connect Gary Jebu to your identity?
Gary Jebu. Yes. Well, I guess it's just luck that I am Yoruba, but I guess if it had been Igbo Gary that happens to be my favorite, I probably would have said Igbo Gary. But yeah, like I said, the process of doing this essay, it helped me get a bit more appreciation for the process. Like, Gary's it's not often the most glamorous. It wasn't always seen as the most glamorous food, but its utility is something like, it's not to be underrated. I thought about doing some other foods that I like beans and tuwo and all this other stuff, but sometimes you gotta appreciate the things that are less underappreciated. Yeah. Jebu Gary's, like I said, I would have gladly said yellow Gary if that was my favorite. I think it's just a coincidence. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds very good, and I'd agree with you. Gary is ubiquitous. It's everywhere you go in Nigeria, and most people eat Gary maybe at least once a day or several times in a week in Nigeria in one form or the other. Personally, I like all the formats. I like to soak it in water with groundnuts, and then if I'm feeling very happy, maybe add some milk, or have it with different kinds of soup. And that's going to bring me to Omobola, because her essay was equally very interesting. It was titled "Okra Soup Made Me Responsible," and I'm really curious about it, because the name of the essay got my attention immediately. How does okra soup make one responsible, Mobi?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's the actual soup that made me responsible. I mean, there's a story behind it, and I did put that in my essay. When I came to Canada, I was 16, and my favorite soup is okra soup, and just the one that my mom used to make. I wasn't a big fan of everybody else's okra because it didn't match up to hers, right? And she used to put, it was like surf and turf. So she used to put beef and chicken, and then she put all sorts of seafood. And we lived in Port Harcourt, so it was periwinkle, croaker fish, different things just inside it. To the point where at a certain point she didn't need the swallow. No offense to Gary, but that was how I grew up. That's what I grew up with. And then when I came to Canada, I didn't know how to make it. And I was 16. I used to go to church for the food most of the times because they used to serve Nigerian food after church, but nobody would bring okra, or if they did, it wasn't up to par. Yes, I'm saying that on an interview. But I eventually had to learn how to cook it myself. And in learning how to cook it myself, I invented my own style because I couldn't make it the way my mom did. So I guess I was hard on everybody else. She was just a culinary master. But I invented my own type, and I had to incorporate the things that I saw in Canada. And it was from there that I actually started cooking a lot more, and I realized that I really did enjoy cooking, and I became a major foodie. I even learned things like meat pie because of that, and I even have a mini business for that now. So I think it all just started with the okra. I guess that's what it means where okra soup made me irresponsible person.
I can definitely see that connection. The desire to enjoy this meal that you had missed led you to look for means to recreate it. And then that has led to an interest in cooking generally, including a wide variety of Nigerian meals. Really interesting. What are some of the challenges you face currently trying to prepare okra soup? I know you mentioned difficulties about finding some of the condiments. I imagine maybe some of the vegetables that you need. So what are the challenges you face? And give us examples of some of the substitutions you've made, to bridge the gap. For instance, you don't have one particular vegetable. What is the vegetable or what is the alternative that you use here in Canada?
Well, it has changed a lot in the last couple of years, because I think when I got here, I really didn't know how to find the ingredients. But we as Nigerians have become so industrious here that you see like Nigerian or African stores popping up everywhere, so you can get the ingredients now. But back then, I used to. I couldn't find the okra from Nigeria, so I had to go and search for I found Indian okra, and I found out that they also eat okra. So it was very interesting. It's longer. It's longer and skinnier than our own as it's fat. But there was that. And then my mom used to sprinkle bitter leaf inside. And I couldn't find that. So I used spinach. And for the seafood, I couldn't find croaker fish, couldn't find periwinkle. So I used calamari and this bassa filet fish. I just chopped it up inside there. There was always crayfish. So those were the major things. And then with the seasoning, initially, because I don't know, it's magic the way Nigerian women do it, where they just use Maggi, salt, and pepper to cook, and for some reason the food tastes amazing, but I couldn't do that. So I had to incorporate other spices that I met here. So using black pepper and used garlic powder and all those things that are generally Canadian type of spices. It ended up being like a fusion dish between Canadian ingredients and Nigerian ingredients.
Interesting and very creative. I'll tell you that we have also had to make similar kinds of adjustments when we try to make some Nigerian meals by borrowing, ideas just like you have, and using some vegetables as substitutes for those things that are not readily available. And it has not taken away from the quality of those meals. Now, I'm curious about how often you get to share your recipe with non-Nigerians, if at all. Do they ever get to taste it, or this is something that you have been enjoying alone and maybe with your friends?
I think because okra is such a weird vegetable to people that aren't used to it. It has a very interesting texture. So I've seen people have been interested in it, but haven't gone as far as to try it, because once I scoop it up and then they see the drawing thing, they're like, no, it's too exotic for me. But with my friends and with people that are Nigerian or African, they love it. Like I said, sometimes, because the two things that my mom and I did were to make it really thick. Sometimes you don't need to swallow, you just sit down with it and eat a bowl of it and you're good. So I guess that's the exposure the okra has gotten.
That is really cool. And I know I can connect to what you are saying because I've spent a good deal of time in Port Harcourt. I know the affinity people in Port Harcourt have for seafood. I have also tried it in a variety of meals, including okra. So I have a very good idea of what it looks like. And I totally agree with you. When the bowl of soup now is filled with seafood, periwinkles, and all the other stuff you spoke about, it makes it really, a full meal on its own, even without the swallow. So next, I'm going to ask Eitade to tell us about her essay, which was titled "A Taste of Home: How Jollof Rice Has Shaped My Identity." This one also blew me out of the water. I was so impressed by your storytelling, and I'd like you to tell us about your essay and how it has helped to shape your identity.
I think I would say, first of all, I'm the daughter of first-generation immigrants, and so I think naturally I lack an inherent connection to Nigeria. But one of my best connections has been my grandmother. She's one of my best friends. I don't even think she knows that I wrote this essay, but the essay is entirely about her. And one of my grandmother's best pastimes is to cook. My grandmother, her first language is not English, but food is a universal language. We all speak food. And so even though we had that language barrier between us, when she gets in the kitchen and she's cooking, I still feel that connection to her. My favorite thing to cook with her is indeed jollof rice. I don't know what it is. There's a special flavor to the way that she does it, but I just cannot get enough of it. And I always ask for her to do it. She's from Abeokuta, so I don't know if that adds a certain flavor or a certain flair to it. And so for me, I think particularly jollof rice is universal. I think I've never met a Nigerian who says that they don't like jollof rice. You might meet a Nigerian who says, I don't like okra, or I don't like moi moi, I don't like anything, but I think everybody does truly love jollof. And so for me, by being in the kitchen with her and by being surrounded by the flavor and the food, I learned a lot about our culture. I got to see what it meant to be Nigerian. I got to see what it meant to be in her shoes and to hear not just her recipes, but her stories, how she grew up, how she was able to leave the village and make a life for herself and to be somebody that she's proud of. And I think that shaped my connection to Nigeria and my perception of Nigeria. I think also in my essay, I talk a lot about the rice itself. It reminds me of things back home. I've only been once, but I think like the spice reminds me of the heat, which I find to be unbearable back home, but the spice reminds me of it. I think the color reminds me of the soil. My dad's from Shaki, and so it brings me back to the village. I think the texture reminds me of some of my favorite Nigerian fabrics. I'm also into fashion and beauty. And so seeing the texture and the flavor and all of it work together reminds me of putting together my favorite outfits. And so I think the amalgamation of all of those factors together gives me a closer connection to a culture that I wouldn't otherwise have, and allows me to build a close relationship with my family, both back home and here.
Really, really, really beautiful. And I like the way you speak about the connection you have with your folks back home, in this case, home meaning Nigeria, because I know Canada is also home for you, but you connect with your folks here as well as the folks in Nigeria. Now, I'm sure you know that one of the raging battles in West Africa is the Jollof Wars. The wars on Jollof have been on forever. And it's quite curious because Jollof didn't even originate in Nigeria. I mean, and you speak to this in your essay, it arose in the Senegambia region. I myself have tried Jollof in different parts of West Africa. I tried it once in Abidjan, in Ivory Coast. It was really nice. And I said, hey, why do people keep saying Nigeria Jollof is the best? And I tried it in Accra as well, in Ghana, and it was really nice also. I've also tried Jollof in Niger, Niger being colloquial term for Nigeria. I've tried that several times in different places, and of course, I love it. I'm curious to know why you think Nigeria's Jollof is, I'm reluctant to use the word best, not that I don't think it's the best, but I want to know so that maybe there is a reason I can give to people who ask me, so why do you think it is the best or at the very minimum unique?
I think that's a good question. I think I speak to that a little bit in my essay. I don't think it's even just Nigerians. I think there's a part in my essay that I cite Prince Charles came to visit and he said, Nigeria, no, they carry last. And I think that already tells you all that you need to know. Mark Zuckerberg also came and he said that of all the jollof rice he's tried on his trip to Africa, again, Nigeria don't know they carry last. And I think that's really true. But I think aside from the politics of it, I think again, to me, it's the best because of how personal it is. I think of a truth, jollof rice is like it speaks to an emotion for me. I tie it to a lot of my best memories, birthdays, barbecues, weddings. A lot of my favorite moments in life have been with a plate of jollof rice. And so I think it's in two dimensions. One, because Prince Charles said it, so it has to be true. But also because personally, it's given me relationship, connection, and it's given me stories to tell other people and tell people in my life.
Thank you. Very, very awesome explanation there. I'm going to stay with you as we move on to the next question, Eitade. What does it mean for you to be a Nigerian, particularly a young Nigerian living in the diaspora?
That's such a good question. I think for me, my identity is dichotomous. One, not only because I'm Nigerian, but I'm a Nigerian immigrant. And so to me, I think being Nigerian is about hard work. I think it's about values. I think it's about patience. And I think it's about being a dreamer. I think everyone in my family has aspirations, they have dreams, and they do things that allow them to achieve these things. And so for me as an immigrant, I feel like on my back, I carry not only my dreams, but the dreams of my ancestors, the emotions, the passions, the things that they didn't have the opportunity to do. I think I also carry the weight or the burden of that with me. And so to me, being a Nigerian is about working hard and doing things that other people might declare to be impossible. And I think specifically as somebody who is Yoruba as well, I don't know, I think there's something very special about the connection that we have with the land, the connection. A lot of my family are farmers. So I think I really envy the connection that they have with the land, the oneness that they have with nature. And so I think all of those together tell a very unique story, or shape a really unique identity of patience, hard work, determination, and overcoming adversity. I know my grandmother, even my mother, my father, they had a lot to go through to get to where they are. But I think regardless of what happened, that ability to triumph or to overcome adversity is what connects us.
Awesome. You really did a lot to define what values Nigerians hold dearly, and I couldn't agree with you more. Ajewole, I'm going to come to you with this question. What, in your opinion, is the biggest challenge facing young Nigerians in Canada at the moment?
It's a tough one. The toughest challenge facing Nigerians, young Nigerians.
Any challenges at all? Any challenges that come to mind? It doesn't have to be the toughest. Any ones you think about as a young Nigerian in the diaspora, or even just a young Nigerian?
Okay, I would say, I think about here, born here, like who weren't born in Nigeria, or don't have much connection to Nigeria. The culture, our culture can be very, but then you said the toughest challenges, but that's just a challenge that I can think of right now, right? Their ability to go in between, to connect to pretty much, I guess it's pretty much like every other young offsprings of immigrants. It's the difficulty of weaving in between cultures, being Canadian and being Nigerian, and it's like a tightrope they have to walk. I'm just thinking about like my younger brother, and it's the tightrope they have to walk. If our very particular Nigerian culture, the particularities of our Nigerian culture and their Canadian sense of being. So it's not always so easy to pretty much weave in between both worlds. It's like they can struggle with, you know, I came here when I was 12, so I had a dose of the Nigerian culture and what is expected of us. So yeah, I find they can, not just my younger brother, but some other, I've seen cases of, you know, young Nigerians not being able to, some of them not being able to relate with their parents, you know. It can be tough. That's the only one that comes to mind right now.
I think you touched on a very, very important topic, and believe me, this conversation, this topic you just raised can be discussed for hours on end without, you know, concluding. You couldn't have said it better. People who come from backgrounds such as you've just described, with one foot in Canada and one foot in Nigeria, you know, because of their heritage, maybe their parents are first or second generation immigrants, and then they are somewhat fresh in a new country like Canada, can feel somewhat lost because you are in between two cultures. So that is totally right. In one instance, you're trying to live with the culture of your parents, and at the same time, you're trying to live with the culture of this new place where you find yourself. And that always creates conflicts that manifest in different forms. So thank you for sharing that. In your view, what do you think are some ways these kind of conflicts can be resolved?
I guess it's just patience, and it just takes time, you know, as the young and as we grow, we get to just get more experience about life, and it's just patience and time. Sometimes it's luck, I guess. Some people it doesn't work out well for some other people, but yeah, as far as we just can only try to see things from different perspectives, you know, see things from,
Yeah, I agree with you. Patience, and then also having tolerance because of the different perspectives that we have. Absolutely important values to apply in our lives. Okay, Omobolale, I want to ask you, what do you think are the most critical changes that we must make today so that young people are better equipped to face the future effectively, particularly young Nigerian Canadians such as yourself?
Do you mean changes here or in Nigeria?
Societal changes generally.
Okay.
And this is closely related to the response we've just received from Ajewole concerning things like conflict in terms of culture and identity, relating with your Nigerianness and your Canadianness. I don't know if that's correct. So what kind of changes do you think are important to make sure that young people are better equipped to face the future and they don't begin to maybe feel left out of either society, you neither belong here nor there, and changes generally that you think are important for young people of today to be better equipped for the future, not just to do with identity, but changes in general?
Okay. In terms of changes that we can make to make it easier to sort of walk that tightrope and assimilate into both, because we do need to have sort of like a dual identity. But I feel as if you can connect to both sides, like if you learn about, for example, you come to a new country, everybody that came here as a first-gen immigrant had to learn the new way of life, because it's very different from the way things are done back home. But I believe that if you can educate yourself on the way things are done and choose the ways that don't make you lose who you are, as a person, like assimilate to the point that you can assimilate, and it's okay if you can't go all the way. At the same time, not losing your connection to like your country and your culture. And that also includes, if especially if you came here at a young age, you may not have stayed long enough to really understand your cultural values or understand your history. Even if you were in the country for a long time, I find that a lot of people don't really know Nigeria's history or the history of their own area. And I feel as if that's a very big part about understanding who we are and also mapping out a better future for ourselves. So by understanding where we came from, we can understand who we are now, and we can apply that to who we are in our new place. So that's for that. In general, things that we need to change, I guess the obvious answer is like, well, I'm hoping for better governance and for leaders who care about the well-being of the people before anything else. I think that we're at a critical point in our history where we need to create a future that young people that are coming from Nigeria or are staying in Nigeria, like a place, we need to create a system or a situation that helps them put their best foot forward and doesn't hinder them or draw them back. I think those are the changes that we need to make anyway.
I think you touched on very, very important topics there, and you are correct. Itade, I want to ask you, what are some common misconceptions people have about young people, and how can we combat these misconceptions and communicate more effectively?
Ooh, I like that question. I think the one that I see the most common is that young people who grew up here, one, don't want to know more about Nigeria, or that they don't want to have that connection. I think sometimes we perceive young people here to be very westernized, or to be hyper connected to Canada and unwilling to learn more, which is why we don't take on the responsibility of teaching the language or going back home frequently or introducing them to the food. And I don't think that that's necessarily true. And I think a second major one is a lack of autonomy for young people. I think Nigerian parents have a habit of trying to maybe dictate either like actions or plans for their children. But I think a lot more effective is building a relationship and having conversations. So instead of treating your child as a non-autonomous being or treating your child as an extension of yourself who is incapable of making important decisions or who's incapable of doing the right thing, I think a better approach would be to ask your child, what do you want from life? What are your dreams? What are your aspirations? Where do you see yourself? And how can I align myself and align my views and who I am to help you get to that point? And I think that would strengthen the relationship between a lot of parents and children. I think there's also maybe a perception, and I don't think this is unique to Nigerian children. I think this is a perception of children altogether. But I think laziness is a big one that I see. I think sometimes we reduce the amount of work that our children can achieve or reduce the potential that we see in our children. But I don't think that that's true. I think everybody has the ability to do something unique, and everybody has the ability to transform the world in their own God-given way. So I think to see all of our children as shining lights with potential to do something amazing and to feed into that potential through programs like the NCA, through programs like this scholarship and like this program, I think are really good ways to combat that idea of laziness or combat that idea that children cannot do anything or they cannot achieve things.
Wonderful responses. I like the point you made about young people, particularly young Canadians, young Nigerian Canadians, being much more interested in Nigeria than people think. That is actually true. I've seen people who share a similar sentiment as you do. I couldn't agree more. But one thing you mentioned that caught my attention is the question of autonomy. And it brought to mind a conversation I was having on Thursday, actually, with people about ownership of children. It started as a conversation about ownership of animals and then moved into ownership of children. And the question here, which I'm asking you, is do parents own their children? Because in that question is the assumption that because of ownership, you can do certain things, and it brings to mind this concept of autonomy. If a parent thinks they own their child, then they can decide for the child what they want, versus the idea I seem to hear from you, which is children need to be given an opportunity to express themselves. So I want to know what you think. Do parents own their children, or is the relationship something more different, like a custodial relationship until the child, is old enough to stand as their own person?
I think ownership implies possession. And I don't think children are possessions. I don't think they're objects to be possessed or to be lived vicariously through, which I think a lot of Nigerian parents have a habit of doing. So even if they don't treat you like they own you, because Nigeria is truly a difficult place to live, they see you as an extension of self. And so ultimately they project their own wishes and the things that they wish they could have done back home, they project them onto you. And that's not always a bad thing, because what it means is that they want you to do well. They want you to succeed. They want you to achieve. But oftentimes that manifests as a rejection of autonomy. It means that they strip you of your ability to do what you want and what your dreams are in exchange for their own. And so I think we have to rethink what parenting looks like. Parenting is not possession. Parenting is not ownership. Like you said, parenting is partnership. Parenting is relationship. It's about being able to match up with somebody and find that middle ground. Does that mean that children should be able to tell their parents all sorts of ridiculous and absurd things? No. But does that mean that children should be able to feel safe enough to voice their own opinions and to make decisions? Yeah, I do believe that. And I think a big problem that a lot of Nigerian children struggle with, I think, is emotional development and emotional maturity. If you spend your whole life being told what to do and you can't walk from point A to point B, you are going to struggle with emotional development. And you're not going to be able to do things like handle rejection or to make small, minor decisions. And that means you are inherently incompetent. And we don't want to raise an incompetent generation. So I think reframing parenting from possession or ownership into a partnership where both people can bring their ideas together and compromise and come up to a middle ground, I think would help a lot of Nigerian children develop that emotional maturity. And I think it would help a lot of Nigerian parents realize that their children are capable and their children also want to do well and they want to achieve.
That is a really brilliant response. Thank you for sharing that. And as you spoke, it really got me thinking about the role of young people in society. So Ombolale, let me come back to you, because this question is somewhat linked to your earlier response about good governance. Often we hear young people say they do not see a role for themselves in nation building. And this is maybe very pronounced in a place like Nigeria, where we've even had recent conversations around the right to protest and government's response to things like protests. So do you agree with the idea that young people do not have a role in nation building? Because sometimes we hear young people themselves expressing this, not even just the older ones, And do you think young people should get engaged in discussions of good governance? If you think so, how?
I think that young people are actually the best positioned to make an impact in governance. But unfortunately, I feel as if in Nigeria, we haven't really been given the opportunity. And I think it plays into the ageism thing in Nigeria, which stems from the whole respecting your elders, and that age comes with wisdom and everything. But I think even in Yoruba culture, it's said that if an elder insults you 3 times, then you are permitted to react. And I think that Nigerian youth I have every right to protest. And I feel as if we need a floor where we can contribute reasonably to the governance that involves us more than most other age groups in the country.
Interesting. I agree with you. Young people do have that role to play, and we need to maybe take a second look at concepts like ageism, where we think that as a function of your age, there are certain things you cannot do. But one would ask, doesn't this ageism conversation go in two ways? For instance, we see a lot of young people who would think that the older ones are not up to date. You know, they don't understand today's technology. They don't understand today's requirements. They don't know what is needed to make society work the way we want it to work or function for our benefit based on the way we see it. What role do you think older people have to play in creating good governance and a system that works for everybody?
I think that the older generation the best role would be for them to guide us, show us the proper way to do things, and then step down and then guide the new people. So in a mentorship capacity, in an advisor capacity, I feel as if there's a major role for the older generation here, but I feel as if it's right when we say that they may not have the best grasp of the modern world or modern technologies, especially with how rapidly things are progressing. Even our generation may not even be able to keep up with, for example, the Gen Z or those that are coming behind them. They would know more than we would when we're in their shoes, right? So I feel as if there's a lot of wisdom that the older generation can give us, but they also need to allow us to practice, so that when eventually, as life does always come to an end and old age just takes people away, we would be well equipped to pick up from where they left off, as opposed to floundering and trying to figure things out when they're no longer here.
Great point. And if you ask me, I think conversations like this are very important for helping us to identify, where the opportunities lie to make the kind of changes that we need, and then start considering things like engagement, partnerships between parents and their offspring, partnerships between the older generations and the younger generation, all with a view to making society better. Ajawale, I'm going to come to you with this question, and that is, if there is only one thing that you hope people who listen to this take away from our conversation, what would that thing be?
Such a broad question. What would you like me to what should this have more to do with Black history or more of the issues with
this has to do with our identity as young Nigerian Canadians, in all we've discussed about our identity, because that is what this conversation actually is about, our identity. What we've just done with food is to use it as an entry point into discussing who we are as young people, what makes us tick, what are our aspirations, what are our inspirations. And if you want to share with people who are going to watch this, one thing to take away, what would that be?
Yeah, I would say young Nigerians are, as you can see from the examples of the two well-spoken ladies here, they're on the go. They work hard. They do hold on very. They have a very strong sense of living up to the expectations that the older ones expect of us, and we do value our heritage. We value the work ethic. We see a lot. We do take in a lot, and we do hope and aspire for greatness. The road to where we hope to end up is not always easy, but young Nigerians they are hardworking people. They do not see them as and then also we young Nigerians, pretty much Nigerians are beautiful people, and be inspired, continue, let everyone find their path. It won't be easy, but if you're on your path, listen to your intuition, follow it, and yeah, we will make Nigeria proud.
I'm happy to hear that declaration and that commitment to playing your part to making Nigeria proud. Omobolanle, any final words from you?
Final words. Well, I agree with Ajewade, and I feel as if young Nigerians have a lot to offer the future. And I think that if we can all learn how to communicate and listen to one another, I think we can do something great.
Thank you very much. And I agree with you when you say that, because sometimes when we look at the conversations that are going on in spaces like social media, it makes one wonder if we are ever going to listen to ourselves versus, just speaking at each other and nobody is really communicating. But then again, when I also see some conversations, I have a lot of hope, and the kind of essays that have been submitted by you three really inspire. Eitade, I'm going to come to you for your final words, please.
I want to start off by thanking the NCA for the interview and for hosting this and for having this really inspiring conversation about identity. And I think Ajewale and Omobolanle have already said it best. I think, again, food might be just the stepping point. Food might be the language we start off with, but as we learn more and as we communicate more, I think Nigeria really does have the potential to be a transformed country, a country that does better. And I'm really excited to see what young people are going to do in the near future.
I'm excited as well. I'm absolutely excited. For me, the reason I was really interested in hearing from you was to get the opportunity to connect with young people like myself and hear from them, get diverse opinions on what it means to be Nigerian Canadian, the opportunity to explore our identity. And I was really excited that the NCA chose to do this through the lens of food, which shone very clearly, which you guys did a good job of demonstrating in your essays. Food is actually a key piece of every society's identity, beyond the nourishing aspect it does, for keeping us healthy and alive and getting us to the next, point. Food also defines our lives, more so as Nigerian Canadians. Because, for instance, if we think about Mobi's example, you want to cook a Nigerian meal and you have to contend with the unavailability of some condiments. That means you have to tap into what is available to create that same meal. But in the end, what you have done is to mix what can be considered two different cultures to arrive at a certain point. It also goes to a lot of other topics, for instance, like feminism and identity. What roles do, for instance, women play in their families in the creation of food? And even how do these things evolve when you move from a place like Nigeria, where a lot of times the women are predominantly responsible for procuring these items by having to go to the market, to a place like Canada, where things might change and you might find the husband being the one who has to go to buy the foodstuff, even though he may not be the one that cooks it, or he may end up participating. So what role food plays in our lives is actually very important. And I was really excited to see the different examples that you guys gave and how it has helped to shape your identity. This is going to be the end of this session. I want to thank you very much for coming. Ajewole, Omobola, and Eitade, you guys have been absolutely awesome, not just today, but in the essays you wrote, absolutely inspirational. We're already working on the 2022 event for Black History Month, and I am hoping that you will participate, but not just you, even your friends, to spread it into your network of Nigerians and let them know that this is what is going on, and then see how we can connect with one another as young Nigerians to make sure that we are leaving our mark, not just in Canada, but also for our people back home in Nigeria. Thank you so very much for joining us, and you have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. Thank you for joining us. NCAGTA is social. You can follow our conversations on Twitter at NCAGTA, or check out our videos on YouTube, Nigerian Canadian Association. We're also on Instagram, tag us NCA_GTA, and you can also follow us on LinkedIn, Nigerian Canadian Association, NCA Toronto. You can also contact us via email, info@ncagta.com or pro@ncagta.com. Our phone number is 866-319-2917. You can also check out our website, www.ncagta.com. We look forward to connecting with you.